Hi, I'm Chris Moore, and we're coming to you live from 4802 Fifth Avenue in Oakland. We've got plenty to talk about over the next half hour, but first, let's meet our panel. Lynn Cullen, she is a longtime radio host and now current internet talk show host. Hello, Lynn.
Howdy.
Political analyst Bill Green also joins us. Good to see you, Bill.
Thanks. A long time.
Yeah.
Valerie McDonald Roberts is the Allegheny County real estate manager. She's stuck in the snow, but we'll get her here shortly. She just got in the door. And filling in tonight for Heather Heidelbaugh is Lenny McAllister, who has served as a Republican analyst, commentator on various national outlets, and is often described as a hip-hop Republican in the age of Obama. Lenny, welcome to the program.
Thanks
Glad
for
to
having
have
me,
you here,
Chris.
sir. All right, let's get started. Earlier today, a Pennsylvania judge ruled that the state's voter ID law is unconstitutional. Commonwealth Court Judge Bernard McGinley said the law, quote, unreasonably burdens the right to vote, end quote. The Corbett administration isn't saying yet whether it will appeal the ruling. Lynn, this has got to be a victory for those who thought that this was meant to quash voters' rights.
Meant to quash?
Yes.
I believe the judge felt that that was the only possible explanation for this totally ridiculous, disingenuous law.
But people make the argument that you got to have a driver's license to get on a plane, you got to have ID to do almost anything today.
Supposedly the law was to correct a problem of people showing up to vote who in fact were not who they said they were. When asked long ago if the state could produce one such individual, one instance, they admitted, the state admits, well, it hasn't happened yet. So we need this law to take care of a problem that has never existed in the first place. This was a cynical effort to depress a certain group of voters who tend, elderly, minority, who tend to vote Democratic. And the Republicans were quite, I think, bald about that. I refer you to a certain, is it Senator Turzai?
No, it's the
Representative. Floor leader, whatever, who said, you know, this should give Pennsylvania to Romney in the last.
No, his exact quote is, this provides an opportunity for Mitt to win Pennsylvania. That's the exact quote. I heard it this afternoon on audio.
Really?
Yes, really.
Okay, well,
it's just a
provides
fact,
an
man.
opportunity. And the judge was, it was a pretty blistering, I've not read the whole thing, a rather blistering ruling. And the judge made the point that the only reason for any laws having to do with this most important franchise and right that Americans have, which is to have a voice in their government, the only reason for any laws is to facilitate that, the right to vote. And in fact, this clearly was an effort to prevent.
All right, Lenny McAllister, other people who supported this law have pointed to Philadelphia and said that there are some instances of people, dead people voting and other kinds of things, misrepresentations in voting law. Did you support this law?
Well, I did not support this law. I actually was one of the few Republicans that came out and spoke against this law. But what we have to talk about is this law versus the premise and the idea around voter validation. I think that if you look at what we have in America, you have a sense of sanctuary cities throughout the country, including here in Pennsylvania.
Sanctuary cities?
Sanctuary cities where undocumented residents can come into a city and basically not have to live up to the laws that we have when it comes to immigration throughout the United States. When you have such a fluid population throughout all different types of states, including New York, a border state, including the South, people coming up from the Sun Belt, border state, Ohio, border states, coming from the Midwest, border states. When you start looking at that, you have to start going to a point in time where you say, how do you proactively address the situation, make sure that the problem is not something that you look at in places such as Illinois and other areas where you have people on the books that have been voting.
But what about here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Well, you got to look. Our population has not been following the patterns of other cities such as the Sun Belt in Illinois. But as we start having jobs come back to Pennsylvania, as we start having people come back into the city, boomerangs like myself, you're going to start having problems that other cities have had to deal with for 10 to 15, 20 years. New York City, for example, actually put up a proposal not too long ago looking to allow undocumented residents to vote in their municipal elections. These are things that if you're going to be on the proactive side of this, you want to make sure that you validate the voting box, not necessarily lock people out of it.
Bill,
remember what I said? We ought to abandon the state liquor system, use the state stores to sell marijuana. There's a component in this bill is to set up a whole new system of stores and a control board and all this. It just sounds exactly like the LCB. It will pass in the Senate. It will not pass in the House, at least this cycle and this election year. I think the better chance is next year when there possibly might be a new governor that has a different view of this. This governor says he will veto it, and you have a Republican House. I think it will pass the Senate. It will not pass the House.
How the heck can, in this day and age, you be against allowing a doctor to prescribe what the doctor thinks is
Did you see who can authorize it?
An herb that will alleviate pain, help glaucoma, help somebody with MS, help somebody with...
Do you know who can sign these things? Chiropractors, dentists, practitioners. That's in the bill. It isn't exclusively MDs.
And on top of that, I mean, you look at the news cycle, we have plenty of doctors and lawyers and others that aren't quite necessarily living up to their professional ethics the way they should be. I mean, when you have OxyContin out on the streets and everything else, there is something to fear. Now, if this is a tight enough piece of legislation...
But that's because people are robbing drugstores.
Well, that's not necessarily because people are robbing drugstores. We have seen this all the time where we have complaints against doctors, whether it's drugs out there or... unfortunately, assaults against their own patients. At some point in time, we're going to have to make sure that legislation is tight enough.
You think this goes too far, this legislation?
I think that this legislation goes in the right direction, but some of the things that I've read about this legislation provides too many loopholes, and that's what I'm fearful of. Do we want Pennsylvania to become Colorado within the next 5 years?
Aren't Republicans, and you're a young one, aren't you, I mean, you're just historically always standing where you're going to get literally run over by progress.
Principles
called principles.
Or politics. Politics has many cities throughout the United States looking well when it comes to Democrats running them, but not running well when it comes to running as cities. I'd rather have principles in place, and then you get the politics straight and get the cities back on track.
Oh, I see.
And that's an example of that.
I see. So, all right.
I think Colorado is the laboratory for this, and
but
I think
that's
a lot.
Recreational use.
I'm just saying. I think
how many states have medical?
16,
something like 16 or 17. It's
16.
hardly. It's not in the lab anymore.
No, it's not. But I think
happened.
they're going to look at Colorado from a finance standpoint. Like, remember the income here. You have state legislators that are always looking for another income stream.
It's going to be like gaming, you think?
Well, gaming, Marcellus Shale. I mean, you could see this. They're talking about $200 million already in Colorado that they've already collected since January 1 in taxes. So this can be a lot of money for a state, and so I would not dismiss that out of hand.
All right. In New Jersey, a special legislative panel investigating an apparent political payback scheme involving aides to Governor Chris Christie today issued 20 new subpoenas. This is not going to go away, is it, Lynn?
No, it is definitely not going to go away. You've got more than one investigatory unit looking into this. All you need is one. I mean, he's built quite a house of cards here. All you need is one piece of evidence that shows that this governor knew something that he said he didn't know, and it's over. It's over.
You mean his presidential aspirations?
Well, definitely his presidential aspirations. And even so, why is everybody assuming, first of all, that he would get the Republican nomination? I can no more imagine a Republican convention populated by who I usually see on the floor of Republican conventions.
Nominating him?
Nominating Chris Christie.
You could say the same thing about Mitt Romney, though. I mean, people did say the same thing about Mitt Romney, which is why you had Newt Gingrich and Herman Cain and Michelle Bachmann and Rick Perry and Rick Santorum and others. So you could say the same exact thing just 2 years ago. The bottom line is this. Chris Christie won a blue state twice. This was a very stupid move politically. You're ahead by double digits in this race. This was nothing more than a coronation for him to go up and give a major speech in late 2013 to begin his run for 2016. And either he allowed his aides or his aides didn't have the foresight to sit there and say, this simply isn't worth it. That may cost him in 2016.
Either he's incompetent, he doesn't know what his inner circle is up to, and he's the one who judged them to be the right people to put in that job. I'm sorry.
These sound like talking points that Republicans say about President Obama. It's being flipped right back against Governor Christie right now.
Is it vindictiveness in any way? You talk about being advised by one governor that you worked with to leave no fingerprints.
Right. Of course it's retribution. I mean, but it was so small to do it. And as I said last week, you don't need a sledgehammer when a stiletto will do.
Yeah.
And you could have waited. He's got 4 years. If he wanted to get back at this mayor, he had 4 years to do it. He could have waited for 2 years when the mayor asked for something special.
I love his cloak and dagger approach to this. A stiletto will do.
Or if you're that confident, wait until you're president and then do something.
Yeah.
We're going to continue. Thursday morning, the state of Ohio used an untested drug cocktail to execute Dennis McGuire for the 1989 rape and murder of a 22-year-old pregnant woman. Witnesses say McGuire struggled, gasped loudly, and made choking noises for nearly 10 minutes before succumbing to the drugs. Does this execution have the potential for reigniting the debate over the death penalty? Lenny McAllister, what do you say?
Cruel and unusual. I mean, if you're going to have the death penalty, so be it. But untested, that's the key word there.
Wait a minute. Was it cruel and unusual what he did to a 22-year-old pregnant woman?
We're talking about the Constitution. And when we're talking about the Constitution and going through the criminal justice system based on constitutional rights, he did get the death penalty. But if you have an amendment saying cruel and unusual, you have to make sure that that untested is no longer part of the equation. I'm sorry.
Well,
as much as I believe in the death penalty, I do not believe in cruel and unusual.
He's absolutely right. We know this is in our Constitution. We know that the way he died was cruel and unusual. The fact that he took this young woman's life, also, yes, that's cruel and unusual, but this is a state in the name of the people doing the same thing, killing somebody in a cruel and unusual way. We either have these standards or we don't. I mean, the reality is this should make everybody think twice about taking a life. And
I don't know why they changed chemicals.
They don't have supplies, apparently, of whatever they
whatever
have
the
used.
state has. I suspect, I hate to say that, but I suspect you could test it on dogs. You could test it on euthanasia.
Animal lovers, please write
Well, I'm
Bill.
just saying, you said, how do we test it?
Yeah, how do we test it?
And I'm saying, I don't know any other way than perhaps animals that are
if
very sick.
If we want to kill people, why don't you just put,
why don't we hang them?
Yeah,
we have enough ways.
Do what the North
Firing
Koreans
squad.
do, right? Put them in a pen of hungry dogs. I mean, this is what happens when you
Talk
start
about cruel and unusual.
Yeah,
of course. But this is what happens. To think that, okay, we're going to murder somebody humanely, it's the whole argument. We've got to.
Well, that's why we got rid of the gas chamber. That's why we got rid of the electric chair. We went to the injections as to be the least.
Life without parole.
Is too expensive for a taxpayer.
All right. And you can also join the conversation on Facebook or send us a tweet at hashtag WQED 4802. I want to thank you, Lynn, for being here with us and defending the liberal side. Lenny, thank you for joining us, too. And Bill, as always, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
For all of us here at 4802 Fifth Avenue, I'm Chris Moore. Have a great weekend. Good night.